Philipp, oh, tell me how we get these OpenTelemetry traces that we see here. One of them from our last video, an end-to-end trace of a GitHub workflow through all of the GitHub Actions jobs into the different, in this case it's a renovate bot, into the Node.js runtime, into what happens in the Docker container, and this with almost zero effort.
Cool, thanks for having me back again. So this is a trace we looked at last time, right? As you said, it's a renovate bot that we were just looking at in my Boomer code repository. Just to remind everybody, this was a GitHub workflow that looked like this, right? And the question we wanted to solve now in this video is, how do we actually get the traces? So I've ripped everything out of here now, so to do it from scratch again. So you go to this repository. I assume, Andy, you will put the link somewhere.
Exactly. All the links we discuss, folks, as you know, it's always in the description of the video.
Exactly. It's also available under the alias of OpenTelemetry GitHub, and you go down to the description how to deploy it. And there's various ways of deploying it because it also supports other things than GitHub, for example, just plain shell scripts. But you go to the GitHub instrumentation, and there is this YAML file. And you literally just grab it and drop it. So we grabbed it, we go to our workflows, we create a new file, we drop the content in, and we call it deploy observability, YAML. And the one thing I have to adjust here or I have to adjust two things here. Number one, it uses the implicit GitHub token to manipulate your repository. If you don't want that, or if your token has not enough permissions in your according to your settings, you can specify a dedicated token here. And I have one prepared. It's called Actions GitHub token. So I just put this token here, and you put some environment variables here for your endpoint and authentication for where your OpenTelemetry data goes. So this is just configuring it like any other OpenTelemetry SDK. So you go to the OpenTelemetry homepage to configuration, and you put in here whatever environment variables you want. You can also send traces and metrics to different places. In this case, I've already prepared some endpoint and some headers to go to Dynatrace. I've added the token, and then I'll get this bad boy into the repository. Default commit message sounds good. What could possibly go wrong? Let's go. And we see it now here, and going to the actions, we already start to see that things are starting to run. We already see here is a deploy OpenTelemetry action, and it's already running. And let's look at it. It's already talking about a pull request. So let's go to the pull requests. And there is, in fact, a pull request open. Let's look at this. It's called deploy OpenTelemetry. And it says here the PR deploys workflow level and job level OpenTelemetry instrumentation. So let's look at that. There are 6 changed files. And what we see here, it touched all of our workflow files, right? So on the one hand, we see that, let's look at the first one here. We see that it added what we call job level instrumentation into every single job. And this is just adding another action at the beginning of every job, right? So this is called actions instrument job, and it copied over the configuration. So it, of course, didn't copy over your secrets, but it did actually copy over the exact configuration of where you want to send the data, right? It does this for every workflow. It even instruments itself. So even the deploy step gets this instrumentation, right? Because we can monitor ourselves then in this way. And it has added one additional completely new file. And this one is the workflow level instrumentation. And we'll talk about this in a second when we look at one of those files. And you see here that usually these are, as I said, additional steps at the beginning of your job. And then there is one extra workflow here that you trigger on a workflow run, and it listed all your workflows here. So this is because this job level instrumentation, it creates metrics, spans, and logs for your jobs that are running, right? But the workflow is usually a collection of jobs. So this extra workflow here that runs after your regular workflows is creating the umbrella span to collect all the jobs under one single workflow span. And the other thing that this thing provides is when you don't actually have job level instrumentation in every job because you don't want it, or maybe it's an unsupported platform. Just for completeness here, this job level instrumentations only supports Linux-based runners, which are actually most of the runners. But if you run something on Windows, for example, then this workflow level instrumentation will also fill in the gaps of the job level instrumentation. The data, which will be much poorer, it will only basically be simple spans that say, this was a job on Windows. It failed or succeeded, and that was it, right?
Yeah.
You don't get deep injection, you don't get details about these things, but it's basically only to fill the gaps with some high-level stuff where you have them. And when we go back, I think I have this, yeah, it already says merged. The reason for that is I have this repository configured to auto-merge PRs, which is, by the way, an awesome security vulnerability almost here in this repository. And when we go to the code again, we can actually look at how this now looks, right? We go to the renovate YAML here, and we see that this thing was added. This is the job level instrumentation. We see the config that was copied over. And one thing that is interesting, maybe what you see here is this is a input variable is called secrets to redact that is defaulting to all your secrets, which means that it uses this information to actually strip the secrets from all the span attributes. We've seen this in the last video, from all the attributes, all the log lines, all the span names, so that basically every string, so that no secret ever leaves your environment here.
Cool. So Philipp, if I can quickly recap, the way people would enable this in their repository is basically adding a workflow that is installing, quote unquote, or enabling OpenTelemetry support by this workflow, looking at all the other workflows, and then if it's not there yet, it will add the one additional step.
Exactly.
That he had. And I really like also the secrets to redact, because this is something that you highlighted in the first video. You're capturing a lot of metadata for every step, but you are omitting to capture any secret information.
Exactly. Yeah. And if you concerning the automatic deployment, all these changes that we've seen, where was that? In the renovate, for example, right? When I go back here, you can deploy these things manually if you choose to. Maybe you want some actions to report data to one endpoint and some to another, or you want to configure them differently. So you can configure them also now here, and it won't be overwritten, or change the configuration. You can also deploy them manually, like this. There is in the repository over here, there is tutorials on how to do this, but this is the one workflow I showed you that you just drop in and it changes all your workflows. That's the simplest way to get started. And you can also look at the potential inputs and configurations of that workflow. You can even configure it to leave some other workflows alone where you don't want to inject, for example. So you can kind of fine tune it on where to inject and where not to inject. The default is just to inject everywhere.
Cool. And then that means this is all it takes. Once these workflows are running, your initial step here, or your two steps, the workflow step and the job instrumentation step, will then start to generate OpenTelemetry signals and then sending it to the endpoint that you configured. Yeah?
Exactly. And you already see over here, you see the deploy OpenTelemetry running, and you even see one of the OpenTelemetry steps already that exported one of the that is the workflow level instrumentation, where it started to export metrics, logs, and traces for one of your workflow runs that was just running. And you can even get a link here of apparently what this exported, and apparently it exported this one.
Perfect. Cool. Can you do me one last favor? Can you go back to the distributed trace? Because this is really, in the end, what you get. You get an end-to-end trace that shows you everything that's happening in your workflow, in each individual step. And then, and this is the magic, you're also then instrumenting bash scripts. So you mentioned in the first video, most GitHub Actions are running on Linux first of all. So you're instrumenting everything that runs on Linux. You can go into the Docker containers, and everything happens fully automatically. And if you have tools that are running as part of an action that are also already emit OpenTelemetry, like I think the Renovate bot team, they have instrumented their Renovate bot with OpenTelemetry, then this data also gets all connected because you are doing the correct propagation of the traces, the trace and span IDs.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Wow. Philipp, there is, I know we talked about, when we talked about this video, we could go one level deeper into how the whole bash instrumentation works. For now, I think, unless there's anything else for you to say for GitHub, I think this will conclude our GitHub instrumentation.
Yes.
Yeah, awesome. Folks, do me a favor, if you have not seen video one, we were showing all the dashboards and then how we can navigate from a dashboard via failed workflows down to the logs and to the traces. This was now more how you can get started, how you can enable your own repositories with this observability capability. But stay tuned, Philipp, you will be back.